The December wind in the Bronx was a torrent of cold air that had transformed into invisible, sharp blades slipping through every crack of the rotting wooden window frame, slicing straight into the skin of Jamal and his daughter. Inside the miserable apartment 5C, where the heating system had been silent for 2 weeks due to a gas shutoff, human breaths exhaled into opaque white clouds, lingering like ghosts in the air. The clock read 8:45 p.m. on Christmas Eve. Outside, the world hummed with cheerful Jingle Bells melodies, with dazzling colored lights reflecting against the night sky. But inside, Jamal Washington's world was left with only dim darkness and bone-chilling cold. Jamal, a 37-year-old man with broad shoulders but gaunt from lack of food, was carefully adding a third blanket over his young daughter. Destiny lay curled up on the old sofa, the only spot in the apartment that avoided the direct draft. She trembled violently, her blue lips slightly moving. "Dad, I'm so cold." Her voice was a whisper, as tiny as a kitten's meow, yet it echoed like thunder in Jamal's chest. His heart tightened, a painful squeeze, but immediately a familiar defense mechanism kicked in. Jamal took a deep breath, swallowing the despair whole, and when he turned his face, he put on his most perfect mask, the radiant smile of Super Dad. "Cold, my little comrade?" Jamal winked, his voice ringing with excitement, drowning out the whistle of the wind through the cracks. "This is a special Christmas Eve challenge, Arctic Expedition. We're in an Eskimo igloo. The rule is simple. Whoever stays warmest and stillest under this protective layer of blankets gets a fancy 24-color crayon set tomorrow morning. Do you accept the challenge, warrior?" Destiny's eyes lit up a little. She burrowed deeper into the blankets, trying to smile. "Does the crayon set have shimmery gold, Dad?" "It does. Gold, silver, diamond, everything," Jamal lied without blinking, gently stroking her braided hair. "Now close your eyes. Imagine you're hugging a giant warm teddy bear. Sleep, sweetie, and tomorrow you'll find the treasure." Destiny giggled, trusting her father's promise completely, and gradually drifted into a fitful sleep. When her breathing became steady, the smile on Jamal's face vanished like a candle blown out by the wind. He slumped onto the cold floor, leaning his back against the wall. Darkness enveloped him, laying bare the brutal truth. In his torn jeans pocket, he had exactly $13, his last crumpled small bills. On the table, a stark red paper lay like a death sentence, an eviction notice, effective 8 a.m. December 26th. They had 36 hours left. Only 36 hours before they would be thrown onto the street. Jamal looked down at his work boots. The sole had peeled halfway off, gaping in mockery of its owner. He had wrapped it tightly with black duct tape, stuffing newspaper inside to retain warmth and keep out the melting snow. His feet were numb and covered in sores from the dampness, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the agony of his pride. This afternoon, Jamal had lost his job. It was temporary work as a packer at a frozen food warehouse. All day he had worked like a mule, skipping lunch to save money. When his shift ended, he saw an employee toss a perfectly intact sandwich into the trash because the wrapper was slightly dented. The gnawing hunger and the image of Destiny at home made Jamal's vision blur. He secretly picked up the sandwich, wiping off the packaging. But the young manager, an arrogant man in a sleek suit, saw him. "What in the hell are you doing, Washington?" the manager shouted, drawing the attention of the entire warehouse. I was just going to take it home. It's still edible, sir," Jamal mumbled, his voice hoarse with shame. "It's a waste to throw it away." "I pay you to work, not to be a sewer rat rummaging through garbage." The manager snatched the sandwich from his hand, throwing it hard onto the dirty concrete floor. And more cruelly, he stomped on it with his polished leather shoes right in front of Jamal. "We hire workers here, not beggars. Get the hell out. You're fired."
In that moment, Jamal clenched his fists so tightly that his nails dug into his skin, drawing blood. He wanted to punch the man's face. He wanted to scream that he wasn't a beggar, he was a father trying to feed his child. But Destiny's image appeared. If he caused trouble, the police would come. If he had a criminal record, social services would take his daughter away. Jamal chose the most painful way. He bowed his head, mumbled an apology, and asked for his day's wages. The manager tossed $50 onto the ground like alms. Jamal picked it up, swallowing the bitter lump in his throat, and shuffled out into the snow. And now that $50 had been used for cardboard, a few candles, and sparse provisions. All that remained was $13 and utter desperation. "I failed. Rashida, I'm sorry," Jamal whispered, burying his head in his knees. He didn't cry. Tears were a luxury he couldn't afford right now. He stood up. He couldn't sit and wait to die. 36 hours remained. He had to go out, had to find something, any job, even washing dishes or shoveling snow in the middle of the night. Jamal kissed Destiny lightly on the forehead, whispering, "Daddy is going treasure hunting," then put on his thin jacket and left the apartment. Manhattan's streets on Christmas Eve were dazzling and cruel. Couples walking hand in hand, happy families carrying large shopping bags past Jamal as if he were invisible. He walked over 50 blocks to save the subway fare, his eyes desperately searching for any help wanted sign. But everything was closed. The clock struck 9 p.m. Jamal stood on the corner of Lexington, his stomach churning with hunger. The cold had numbed his fingertips. Just then, he saw her. A middle-aged woman, elegantly dressed in expensive designer clothes, was walking quickly. She looked powerful and wealthy, the kind of person Jamal would likely never have the chance to speak to in his life. But then she stumbled. She clutched her chest, her face contorted in pain, and collapsed face first onto the cold sidewalk like a falling domino. The flow of people around her continued. A few glanced and hurried past. A group of teenagers pulled out their phones to film. No one stopped. The city's indifference was colder than the snow. "Damn it, not now," Jamal muttered. He could have walked away. He was hungry, desperate, and hated the rich, just like the manager that afternoon. But his feet automatically ran toward her before his brain could stop them. Jamal knelt on the concrete, not caring that his worn knees ripped further. He turned the woman over. Her lips were blue, her eyes rolled back, and she wasn't breathing. "Hey, lady, wake up. Don't die on Christmas Eve. God is busy right now." Jamal yelled, his voice laced with a grim jest to steady himself, but his hands were already interlaced, placed on her chest. He began CPR. 1, 2, 3, 4. The first aid skills he'd learned while working as a security guard flooded back. Jamal poured all his remaining strength into each compression. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the sub-zero cold. "Don't you dare die, you hear me? This vest is expensive. You'll get it dirty lying here," he roared, desperately pumping her chest. In that life-or-death moment, Jamal no longer saw a wealthy woman. He saw Rashida, his wife, who had died in his arms 3 years ago because the ambulance arrived too late. Past grief transformed into current strength. He wasn't saving this stranger out of pure goodwill. He was saving her because he refused to let death win in front of him one more time. Push deep. Release. Push deep. Release. 2 minutes passed like 2 centuries. He heard the woman's ribs crack under his hands. The crowd started to gather and watch. Finally, a violent gasp echoed. The woman's chest rose and fell again. She coughed raggedly, her eyes opening dazedly to look at him. An ambulance siren wailed in the distance. Jamal exhaled, collapsing from exhaustion. As the paramedics rushed forward to take over, Jamal staggered to his feet. A paramedic turned back. "Hey, what's your name, man? You just saved her life." Jamal looked down at his clothes smeared with dirt, at his ripped boots, and then at the camera flashes of the filming crowd. He pulled his hood over his face and retreated into the shadows of the alley. "Just call me "The Christmas ghost," he whispered, then turned and ran. He didn't want trouble. He didn't want anyone to see his destitution, and most importantly, he had to get home before Destiny woke up and found her father gone. 3 days passed. December 27th, the eviction deadline had arrived. Jamal was busy packing the few belongings of father and daughter into 2 large black garbage bags. Destiny sat silently on the sofa, clutching her worn-out teddy bear, her large eyes filled with tears as she watched her dad. "Dad, where are we going?" "We're going camping." Jamal tried to muster a smile, but this time it was crooked and painful. "We're going to find a new place, bigger and better." A knock sounded at the door. Jamal's heart stopped. The landlord, or the police, they had come to throw him out. He took a deep breath, opened the door, ready to beg for one more day. But standing there wasn't the fat landlord. It was the woman he had saved on Christmas Eve. She looked completely different. Gone was the bluish, gasping look. She stood there, powerful and sharp, in a fur-trimmed coat worth a fortune. Behind her stood 2 large bodyguards. Her presence made the cramped, dilapidated hallway feel suffocating. "Catherine Sterling?" she asked, her voice resonant and firm. Jamal was stunned, his hand still gripping the doorknob. "How did you find me?" "I am Catherine Sterling. When I want to find someone, I find them," she said, her eyes sweeping across the bare apartment, noticing the black plastic bags, the shivering child, and the bone-deep cold in the room. She frowned slightly, not in disgust, but with an emotion hard to name. She walked straight into the apartment without waiting for an invitation, her heels clicking on the rotting wood floor. Catherine placed her Hermes handbag on the only remaining table and pulled out a pre-signed check. She pushed it toward Jamal. "I don't like owing anyone anything," Catherine said, her voice as cold as if negotiating a business contract. "You saved my life. The doctors said without timely CPR, I would have been brain dead. Here is $50,000. Consider it fair compensation. Take it and sort out your mess." Jamal looked down at the check. $50,000. The amount danced before his eyes. It was warm heating. It was a new apartment. It was nice clothes, good food, school fees for Destiny. It was salvation from this hell. His stomach clenched. His hand trembled, wanting to reach out and take it. Destiny was also looking at him, her eyes full of hope. But then the word mess that Catherine had just uttered echoed in his ears, and the way she tossed the check onto the table like throwing a bone to a hungry dog touched something deep within Jamal. The only thing he had left after losing everything, his self-respect. Anger flared, hot and intense, chasing away the cold. Jamal lifted his head, his gaze changed. It was no longer the resignation of a failure, but the pride of a man. "You think my life is a mess that can be cleaned up with your loose change?" Jamal picked up the check. Catherine smirked, expecting him to thank her profusely. But he didn't. Jamal handed it back to her, pressing it firmly into her hand. "Take your money back." The smile froze on Catherine's face. "Are you crazy? You're being evicted. Your daughter is freezing to death. How long are you going to play the pathetic hero?" "I'm not playing the hero," Jamal said, his voice low, emphasizing every word. "I saved you because that night, on that sidewalk, you weren't the billionaire Catherine Sterling. You were just a dying human being. I saved you because my conscience wouldn't let me walk away. If I take this money, that act becomes a transaction, and I, Jamal Washington, do not sell my kindness." He pointed toward the door, his chest heaving. "You think your life is a mess that can be cleaned up with your loose change? You price your life at $50,000. To me, a life is priceless. Now please, leave my home. My daughter is watching, and I don't want her to think her father's honor can be bought with money." The room fell silent. Only the sound of the wind whistling through the cracks remained. Catherine stared blankly at the man before her. She had met thousands of flatterers, thousands who wanted to siphon her money, but she had never met a penniless man standing on the edge of the abyss who dared to refuse a fortune just to protect his dignity. Her anger vanished, replaced by astonishment and respect. She looked at Destiny, the child gazing at her father with absolute admiration. She finally understood. He wasn't rich in money, but he was rich in something else. Catherine put the check back in her bag. She took a deep breath, changing her posture. It was no longer a condescending handout, but an equal challenge. "Fine, you have self-respect. Very impressive," she said, her voice softening but still sharp. "But self-respect doesn't buy heating. Self-respect doesn't pay the rent. You're a good father, but you're a poor provider." Jamal gritted his teeth. Her words were like salt in a wound because they were true. Catherine pulled another document from her briefcase, not a check. "So I won't give you anything for free. I will buy your labor. The operations manager position at Sterling Tech is vacant. Starting salary $78,000 a year, full insurance for both you and your daughter." She placed the contract on the table where the check had been. "I need someone who can keep a cool head in a crisis, the way you did when you saved me. And I need someone honest to the point of foolishness, the way you just refused 50 grand. Catherine looked directly into Jamal's eyes, her gaze boring into his soul. "You can continue to hug your self-respect and let your child sleep on the street tonight. Or you can swallow your ego, come work for me, and give your child the life she deserves. You choose, your ego or your daughter's future." Jamal looked at the contract. The numbers danced. $78,000. Health insurance. He turned to look at Destiny. She was still hugging the torn teddy bear, her lips blue from the cold but trying to smile at him. What was self-respect if it couldn't protect the person he loved most? Jamal closed his eyes. A hot tear rolled down his cheek, falling onto the cold floor. He took a deep breath, locking away the pain and the pride. When he opened his eyes, he took the pen.
"I accept," Jamal said, his voice hoarse but firm. He signed his name on the paper, the stroke strong and deeply etched into the tabletop. "I will work for you. Not for you, Catherine, but for my daughter." Catherine took the contract back, a slight smirk of satisfaction playing on her lips, the smile of someone who had just found a rough diamond in the ashes. "Good. 8 a.m. sharp on Monday. Don't be late. And Jamal," she paused at the door, "wear something decent." The door closed. Jamal sank into the chair, holding Destiny tightly. He had sold his labor, but he had kept his soul. And tonight, for the first time in months, he knew that tomorrow the sun would rise. 8 a.m. on the first Monday at Sterling Tech. Jamal walked into the lobby of the glass and steel skyscraper, looking out of place. He wore a threadbare suit bought from a thrift store 5 years ago, the sleeves slightly short, exposing his bony wrists, and his tie was tied clumsily by his 9-year-old daughter. Around him, office workers glided past in crisp designer outfits, the scent of expensive perfume overpowering the air. Insecurity slithered in Jamal's stomach like a cold snake. He knew they were looking at him. He knew they were whispering about the lucky guy the CEO picked up from the trash heap. To counteract the urge to shrink away, Jamal flipped the switch on his familiar defense mechanism. He became a clown. "Good morning, Benny." Jamal clapped the old security guard on the shoulder, laughing loudly. "Your stomach got bigger again. You must have been sneaking pizza behind your wife's back last night, didn't you?" Walking past the janitor mopping the floor, he winked and whistled a cheerful tune. "Maria, the floor is so shiny I can see the wrinkles on my forehead." He laughed loudly, teased everyone, connecting with the manual laborers, the class he belonged to. His laughter echoed through the hallway, discordant in the silent, dignified space of the tech corporation. He thought this was how he would survive, how he would show he wasn't afraid.
But from her office on the 52nd floor, watching the surveillance monitors, Catherine Sterling didn't see connection. She only saw unprofessionalism. She saw a mistake. Wednesday afternoon, the intercom summoned Jamal to the CEO's office. Jamal walked in, still maintaining his cheerful smile. "You called for me, boss? Missed me already? Or need advice on where to get cheap, good coffee?" "Sit down." Catherine didn't look up from her documents. Her voice was ice cold.
She threw a pile of files onto the gleaming glass desk. They were complaint reports from other department heads about Jamal causing a disturbance and lacking managerial demeanor. "I staked my reputation to bring you here, Jamal." Catherine took off her glasses, looking at him with a sharp gaze. "I need an operations manager who can run this building, not a clown entertaining the lobby. You come to work with a crooked tie. You laugh loudly with the cleaning staff during working hours. If you can't take this seriously, then get out. Go back to your chaotic world." The smile on Jamal's lips died. The room was silent, save for the low hum of the air conditioner. Jamal slowly stood up. He didn't bow his head and apologize like he did to the warehouse manager long ago. He walked toward Catherine's desk, placed his hands on the polished surface, and looked her straight in the eye. For the first time, Catherine saw that those eyes were not mocking. They were deep, bloodshot, and contained raw pain. "You think I like laughing?" Jamal's voice dropped, hoarse and edged with bitterness. "I laugh because if I stop, I will cry, Catherine. You look at this suit and find it ridiculous, don't you? It's the best suit I own, and I had to skip breakfast for 3 days to afford to dry clean it before coming here. You find me joking with Benny or Maria pointless? They hold the keys to every door, every pipe here, while your degree-laden engineers don't even know where the trash compactors are." Jamal's breathing was ragged. He slapped his chest. "My wife died because I was poor. My daughter almost slept under a bridge because I was unemployed. Do you know every night after Destiny is asleep, I stay up until 3 a.m. reading technical documents, memorizing the electrical schematics of this damn building. I do that to be worthy of the $78,000 you pay me. I am a clown, yes, but this clown is straining every second so that his daughter's world doesn't collapse again." Catherine was speechless. She sat motionless, her eyes wide with surprise. The clown facade had fallen, revealing a man of immense tenacity and vulnerability. She realized she had been too arrogant in judging him. "Jamal, A sudden piercing alarm blared, cutting her off. "Fire alarm! Fire alarm! Evacuate immediately!" Emergency lights flashed red. The entire 52-story building shook with the sound of chaotic footsteps. Catherine turned pale, jumping up. "What's going on?" Jamal didn't answer. He rushed out of the room, grabbing the walkie-talkie from his trembling secretary. "Brad, status report!"
Brad's, the head of the technical team, came over the radio, panicked. I don't know. The sensor is signaling fire on the 34th floor, but the camera sees nothing. The automatic fire suppression system isn't activating. I don't dare cut the main power. If I do, the rescue elevators will stop. Do not cut the main power. Shut down Zone B, Jamal yelled, running while pulling off his cumbersome tie and throwing it to the floor. He was no longer a clown, nor a subordinate. He was a commander. The elevators were locked due to safety protocol. Jamal shoved open the emergency exit, looking up the dark stairwell. 34th floor. He started running. The first 10 floors he soared on the wings of fear. The next 10, his legs felt like lead. His old suit was drenched in sweat, sticking to his body. His breath hitched in his chest, but Jamal didn't stop. He knew if he waited for the fire department, the damage would be millions of dollars, or worse, loss of life. 34th floor. Jamal kicked open the door to the mechanical room. Thick black smoke poured out, reeking of burning plastic. There was no large fire, just sparks showering from an overloaded central electrical cabinet. Brad was wrong. It wasn't a fire, but a short circuit in the main HVAC system. If not handled immediately, it would explode.
"Get back!" Jamal shielded his nose, plunging into the smoke. He had no protective gear, only the experience of a street mechanic. He tore off the sleeve of his suit jacket, wrapped it tightly around his hand, and grabbed the red-hot emergency cutoff lever. "Ah!" he roared as the heat seeped through the fabric, but his hand wouldn't let go. With a fierce yank, the lever slammed down. The sparks stopped. The overwhelming hum of the overloaded system ceased. Only Jamal's ragged breathing remained in the darkness. 15 minutes later, when the safety system was reactivated, Jamal descended to the main lobby. The entire company was gathered there. Catherine stood amidst the crowd, her face etched with anxiety. When she saw Jamal step out of the now functioning elevator, everyone fell silent. He looked disastrous. His suit jacket sleeves were ripped off, his face was smudged with soot, and his right hand was red from a minor burn. But he stood tall, dignified. Brad looked down in shame. Catherine walked quickly toward him. She didn't utter any cliches about procedure or discipline. She pulled a pristine white silk handkerchief from her pocket, gently wiping the soot from Jamal's cheekbone.
The action caused a faint stir in the lobby. "I apologize," Catherine said, her voice loud enough for those nearby to hear. "I was wrong about you. You are not a clown. You are the best man I have." Jamal smirked, his smile this time weary but genuine, laced with his familiar slyness. Boss cleaning an employee's face like this requires a special service fee, and I demand compensation for a new suit. Catherine laughed, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. In that moment, the wall between the billionaire CEO and the poor single father completely crumbled. In its place was respect, and something else budding, warmer than any heater. 6 months passed. Jamal and Destiny's lives had turned a new page. They moved into an apartment with a fully functioning heating system. Destiny had an iPad for school, and Jamal had better-fitting suits. But the biggest change was his relationship with Catherine. They were more than boss and employee. They were confidants. Their Tuesday morning coffee sessions became an indispensable routine. Jamal taught Catherine how to eat a roadside hot dog, and Catherine taught him how to appreciate fine wine. Destiny called Catherine Aunt Cat and often came to the office to do her homework. But happiness for Jamal always seemed to come with fear. He was afraid everything was too good to be true. And that fear materialized one October afternoon. It was Destiny's birthday. Catherine had promised to leave work early to take the father and daughter out to dinner. She was standing in Jamal's office, holding a gift wrapped in pink paper, smiling as she talked about the evening's plans. "Destiny is going to love this telescope, Jamal. Remember not to—" Her words broke off. Catherine's face turned ashen. She clutched her left side, the gift box falling to the floor and shattering. "Catherine?" Jamal jumped out of his chair. She stumbled, her eyes wide with terror, looking at him, then collapsed onto the cold floor. A second heart attack, far more devastating than the first. "No!" Jamal lunged across his desk, sliding across the floor to catch her. Her body went limp, her breathing labored, then ceased. "Call 911, now!" Jamal screamed at the secretary who stood frozen in the doorway.
He laid Catherine flat on the floor. It was CPR again, the familiar chest compressions, but this time Jamal's steel hands trembled violently. Last time, on the sidewalk on Christmas Eve, he saved a stranger to protect his conscience. This time, he was saving his entire world. "Catherine, wake up!" Jamal pumped her chest and roared, tears blurring his vision. "You can't die. You promised Destiny dinner. You can't give up." The strong, humorous, optimistic facade of the single father shattered completely. "Please, don't leave me," he sobbed, his heartbreaking cries echoing through the office. "I can't lose anyone else. I need you. Destiny needs you." Every compression on her chest was a constriction around his own heart. He was utterly terrified of the cold touch of death seeping beneath his hands. This was no longer a battle for self-respect. This was a battle for love. The ambulance sirens wailed in the distance, but for Jamal, time seemed to have stopped right now, trapping him in the horror of loss once more.
The steady beeping of the heart monitor was the only sound in the high-level recovery room at Mount Sinai Hospital. Outside the window, the first snow of the season began to fall, blanketing Manhattan, just like that fateful night a year ago. But inside this room, the air was thick with anxiety. Jamal sat on the hard plastic chair beside the bed, his head resting on the edge of the mattress, his calloused hand tightly gripping Catherine's pale, thin one. He had been sitting like that for 6 hours, without food, without drink, and most importantly, without a smile. The humorous mask of the clown had been discarded at the door of the emergency room, leaving behind a man stripped bare by extreme fear. Catherine's eyelids fluttered. She slowly opened her eyes, a sharp pain in her chest, but the warmth from the hand gripping hers was even more palpable. She turned her head and saw Jamal's messy hair and his faintly trembling shoulders. "Jamal?" Her voice was a whisper, weak as the wind through a crack. Jamal flinched. He looked up sharply. His eyes were red, swollen, streaked with veins from exhaustion and suppression. "Catherine," he leaned in, his other hand gently stroking her forehead, his voice trembling. "You're awake. Thank God. Thank God." Catherine saw a tear track still wet on his cheek. She smiled weakly, her voice teasing despite her difficult breath. Are you crying? My tough manager cries too?" Jamal hastily wiped his eyes, inhaling deeply to regain composure. His face relaxed, and that characteristic crooked smile returned, but this time it wasn't used to hide the pain, but to mask overwhelming relief. "Crying? Just dust in my eye," Jamal sniffled, trying to sound lighthearted. "Besides, if you left, who would sign my paycheck this month? I still have payments on that new heated chair I bought." Catherine chuckled, but winced from the pain. She squeezed his hand gently, her gaze becoming tender and deep. "You fool, you saved me again." "No," Jamal shook his head, leaning down to lightly kiss the back of her hand, his voice low, sincerely painful. "You saved me. If you hadn't woken up, I don't know what I would have done." In that moment, amidst the smell of antiseptic and the sound of machines, they knew they belonged together. No flowery declaration was needed. The fear of loss had said it all. 2 weeks later. The Manhattan sky was unusually clear after the snowstorm. Jamal's old but highly polished Ford pulled up to the gate of Woodlawn Cemetery. Jamal stepped out, adjusting the collar of his suit. The new suit Catherine had bought him, perfectly fitted and smart. He walked around to open the door for Catherine. She was still weak, her complexion slightly pale, but her smile was radiant. Destiny skipped out of the car, clutching a bright bouquet of yellow roses, the kind her mother had loved most. "Dad, will Mom like Aunt Catherine?" Destiny asked, her eyes hesitant. "She'll love her, just like your dad and you do," Jamal winked, taking his daughter's hand and helping Catherine walk on the gravel path. They stopped before a small, clean grave beneath the bare branches of an old oak tree. Rashida Washington's name was simply carved on the headstone. Jamal released the two women, stepping forward. He knelt, gently brushing the thin layer of snow from the headstone. Inside him was a storm of emotions. Guilt crept in. Was he betraying the memory of his loyal wife who had endured the poorest times with him? He took a deep breath, turning back to look at Catherine. She stood there, silent, respectful, devoid of jealousy or discomfort. She looked at him with absolute understanding. Jamal took Catherine's hand, pulling her closer, then began talking to the headstone as if Rashida were sitting right there, listening. "Honey, I haven't been here in a long time," Jamal's voice trembled. "Today, I brought someone to meet you. This is Catherine." The wind rustled through the dry branches. She's filthy rich. You wouldn't believe it. She's demanding, she criticizes me, and she's a terrible cook." Jamal smiled lightly, tears beginning to roll down his cheeks. "But honey, she loves us. She pulled me out of the abyss when I was ready to give up. She gives Destiny books, gives her dreams, and gives me a reason to genuinely smile every day. Jamal squeezed Catherine's hand tightly. I know I promised to love you forever, and I still love you. You are my most beautiful past. But I'm still alive. Destiny is still alive, and we need a future. I ask your permission to be happy. Please accept her. The air was utterly silent. Catherine also shed tears, bowing her head. Hello, Rashida. I promise to take care of them with the life he saved. Destiny stepped up, placing the bouquet of yellow roses next to the headstone. She put her hand on the cold stone. Mom, please say yes. Aunt Catherine is good. She makes Dad laugh a lot, and she promised not to make me eat broccoli. Just then, a gentle breeze suddenly picked up, swirling the dry leaves around their feet, bringing an unexpected warmth amidst the cold winter. The heavy feeling in Jamal's chest suddenly vanished. He felt light, as if Rashida had smiled and nodded her assent. Jamal stood up and turned to Catherine. He reached into his inner jacket pocket, pulling out a small red velvet box. It wasn't a Tiffany or a Cartier. It was a simple ring he bought with 3 months of his savings. Catherine brought her mouth to her mask, stunned. Catherine. Jamal looked directly into his eyes, no longer with mockery, only the sincerity of an experienced man. I don't have billions like you. I don't have a mansion or a private jet. I only have these calloused hands and a heart that was once broken but is now whole because of you. He opened the ring box. The tiny stones sparkled in the winter sun. Will you be Destiny's mother and my lifetime boss? I promise I'll never ask for a raise, only for love. Catherine's tears streamed down her face. She nodded repeatedly, speechless. Jamal slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Yes, I will, she whispered, embracing him tightly. And you get a raise, to the husband level. Destiny cheered happily, hugging both of their legs. The 3 of them stood there, embracing under the old oak tree, forming a strong unit that no storm could knock down. That night, in Jamal's new apartment, a cozy place with a working fireplace and a fridge full of food.
There were no candles or extravagant party, just the 3 of them gathered around a small dining table. On the table was a large pizza and several cans of soda. Destiny was excitedly talking about her upcoming science fair project, gesticulating wildly. Catherine sat next to her, listening attentively, occasionally wiping a spot of tomato sauce from the child's cheek as naturally as a real mother. Jamal sat across from them, watching the scene. He remembered last Christmas Eve, the bone-chilling cold, the shared ramen noodles, and the deceptive Arctic expedition game to mask their poverty. He remembered the feeling of helplessness looking at his torn boots. Now, the room was warm. His daughter's laughter was bright, and the most powerful woman in the city was sitting, eating pizza with her hands in his kitchen, wearing his cheap ring with pride. Jamal felt a profound peace spread through his chest. He no longer needed to steel himself. He didn't need to play the clown for amusement or the superhero carrying the world on his shoulders alone. He leaned back in his chair, took a sip of soda, and smiled. Not the crooked smile, not the smile that hid pain. It was Jamal's smile, a worker, a husband, a father, a happy man.